Jaya Gopi Janavallabha Girivaradari Jaya Gopi Janavallabha Girivaradari Yashodanandana Braja Janarandana Yashodanandana Braja Janaranjana Yashodanandana Braja Janaranjana Yamuna Tira Vanachari Yamuna Tira Vanachari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja-Bihari Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhara Shri Vasari Gaura Bhaktavrinda Jaya Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhara Shri Vasari Gaura Bhaktavrinda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama Hare Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama Hare Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama Rama Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama Rama Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama Rama Hare Hare Gaura Hari Bol Hari Bol Hari Bol Nitai Gaura Hari Bol Hari Bol Hari Bol Nitai Gaura Jaya Gaura Nitai Gaura Nitai Gaura Nitai Jaya Gaura Nitai Jaya Gaura Nitai Gaura Nitai Gaura Nitai Jaya Gaura Jaya Jaya Prabhupada 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 Jaya Jaya Prabhupada Jaya Jaya Prabhupada 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 Jaya Prabhupada Jaya Prabhupada Jaya Prabhupada Jaya Prabhupada Jaya Prabhupada Prabhupada Jaya Jaya Prabhupada Jaya Jaya Prabhupada Jai Grantaraj Srimad-Bhagavatam ki Jai Srila Prabhupada ki Jai Sri Gaur Nitai ki Jai Nitai Gaur Premanande. So welcome to this morning's class. Thank you for coming into the temple today. and lending your ears to the hearing of this wonderful topics of the conversations between Maitreya and Vidura. So today we're starting a new chapter, chapter 8, and this chapter is titled The Manifestation of Brahma from Garbhodakaśāyī Viṣṇu. And so we're beginning on text number 1 today. So we'll recite this text together. Maitreya uvacha,
Maitreya uvacha,
Satsevaniyo bata Pūru vangsho,
Satsevaniyo bata Pūru vangsho,
Yallo kapalo bhagavat pradanaha,
Yallo kapalo bhagavat pradanaha,
Babu viteha jita kirti malam,
Babu viteha jita kirti malam,
Pade pade nutanayasya abhikshnam,
Pade pade nutanayasya Viṣṇu,
Maitreya uvacha,
Maitreya uvacha,
Satsevaniyo bata Pūru vangsho,
Satsevaniyo bata Pūru vangsho,
Yallo kapalo bhagavat pradanaha,
Yallo kapalo bhagavat pradanaha,
Babu viteha jita kirti malam,
Babu viteha jita kirti malam,
Pade pade nulanayasya bhikshnam,
Pade pade nutanayasya Viṣṇu,
Maitreya uvacha,
Maitreya uvacha,
Satsevaniyo bata Pūru vangsho,
Satsevaniyo bata Pūru vangsho,
Yallo kapalo bhagavat pradanaha,
Yallo kapalo bhagavat pradanaha,
Babu viteha jita kirti malam,
Babu viteha jita kirti malam,
Pade pade nulanayasya bhikshnam,
Pade pade nutanayasya Viṣṇu.
Maitreya uvacha,
Maitreya uvacha,
Satsevaniyo bata Pūru vangsho,
Satsevaniyo bata Pūru vangsho,
Yallo kapalo bhagavat pradana,
Yallo kapalo bhagavat pradana,
Bhuviteha jita kirti malam,
Bahu viteha jita kirti malam,
Pade pade nutanayasya Viṣṇam,
Pade pade nutanayasya Viṣṇam. Maitreya uvacha,
Maitreya uvacha,
Satsevaniyo bata Pūru vangsho,
Satsevaniyo bata Pūru vangsho,
Yallo kapalo bhagavat pradanaha,
Yallo kapalo bhagavat pradanaha,
Babu viteha jita kirti malam,
Babu viteha jita kirti malam,
Pade pade nutanayasya Viṣṇu,
Pade pade nutanayasya bhikshnam,
Maitreya uvacha,
Maitreya uvacha,
Satsevaniyo bata Pūru vangsho,
Satsevaniyo bata Pūru vangsho,
Yallo kapalo bhagavat pradhana,
Yallo kapalo bhagavat pradana,
Babu viteha jita kirti malam,
Babu viteha jita kirti malam,
Pade pade nutanasya Viṣṇu,
Pade pade nutanayasya bhikshnam.
Maitreya uvacha,
Maitreya uvacha, Satsevaniyo bata Pūru vangsho, Yallo kapalo bhagavat pradanaha,
Babu viteha jita kirti malam,
chorus. Yeah.
Pade pade nutana
Viṣṇu. Thank you. Hari Bol. Maitreya Uvaca. Satsevaniyo Vatapurvamsho Yallokapalo Bhagavat Pradhanaha Bahuviteha Jitakirtimalam Pade pade nutanayasya Viṣṇam. Maitreya Uvaca. Satsevaniyo Vatapurvamsho Yallokapalo Bhagavat Pradhanaha Bahuviteha Jitakirtimalam Pade pade nutanayasya Viṣṇam. Hare Krishna, Jai. So we'll say the word for word together. Maitreya Uvaca.
Maitreya Uvaca.
Sri Maitreya said.
Sri Maitreya said.
Satsevaniya.
Satsevaniya.
Worthy to serve the pure devotees.
Worthy to serve the pure devotees.
Bhatta.
Bhatta.
Oh, certainly.
Oh, certainly.
Pūru Vangsha.
Pūru Vangshaha.
The descendants of King Pūru.
The descendants of King Pūru.
Yat.
Yat.
Because.
Lokapalaha.
The kings are. Bhagavat Pradhanaha. Chiefly devoted to the personality of Godhead.
Chiefly devoted to the personality of Godhead.
Babhuvita. You are also born. Iha. In this. Ajita. The Lord who is unconquerable. Kirtimalam. Chain of transcendental activities. Pade pade. Step by step. Nutanayasi. Becoming newer and newer. Abhikshnam. Always. Translation and purport by His Divine Grace A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada Ki
Jai.
Translation. The great sage Maitreya Muni said to Vidura, the royal dynasty of King Pūru is worthy to serve the pure devotees, because all the descendants of that family are devoted to the personality of Godhead. You are also born in that family, and it is wonderful that because of your attempt, the transcendental pastimes of the Lord are becoming newer and newer at every moment. We'll say this translation responsibly. The great sage Maitreya Muni said to Vidura, the royal dynasty of King Pūru is worthy to serve the pure devotees. Because all of the descendants of that family are devoted to the personality of Godhead.
are devoted to the personality of Godhead.
You are also born in that family.
You are also born in that family.
And it is wonderful that because of your attempt,
And it is wonderful that because of your attempt,
the transcendental pastimes of the Lord
the transcendental pastimes of the Lord
are becoming newer and newer
are becoming newer and newer
at every moment.
at every moment.
Purport, please hear. The great sage Maitreya thanked Vidura and praised him by reference to his family glories. The Pūru dynasty was full of devotees of the personality of Godhead and was therefore glorious. Because they were not attached to impersonal Brahma nor to the localized Paramatma, but were directly attached to Bhagavan, the personality of Godhead. Hare Krishna. And because of this attachment, they were worthy to render service to the Lord and his pure devotees. Because Vidura was one of the descendants of that family, naturally he engaged in spreading wide the ever new glories of the Lord. Maitreya felt happy to have such glorious company as Vidura. He considered the company of Vidura most desirable because such association can accelerate one's dormant propensities for devotional service. Srila Prabhupada ki jai. Amagyanatimirandasya jananjana shalakaya chakshushan militam yena tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha. Shri Chaitanya Manobhishtam Stapitam Yena Bhutale Swayam Rupa Karamayam Dadati Swapadantikam Vandeham Shri Guru Shri Yuta Padakamalam Shri Gurum Vaishnavamscha. Hey Krishna Shri Rupam Sagrajatam Sahagana Raghunatam Vitam Tam Sajivam Sadvaitam Savadutam Parijana Sahitam Shri Krishna Chaitanya Devam Shri Radha Krishna Padam Sahagana Lalita Shri Vishakam Vitamscha. Hey Krishna Karuna Sindhu Dinabandhu Jagatpate Gopesha Gopika Kanta Radha Kanta Namastate Tapta Kanchana Gaurangi Radhe Vrindavaneshwari Rishabhanu Sute Devi Pranamami Hari Priye Vanshakalpa Tarubhyascha Kripa Sindhubhya Evacha Patitanam Pavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namaha. Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhara Shri Vasani Gaura Bhakta Vrinda. Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare. So after hearing in the last chapter many questions by Vidura, this verse at the start of chapter 8 is showing the appreciation that Maitreya Muni has for his association with Vidura and with the questions that he is being asked. This topic has come up a number of times in the Srimad-Bhagavatam where not only the hearer but the speaker is showing his appreciation for the person that's in his audience and asking the questions. We saw Shukadeva Goswami showed the same kind of appreciation for Maharaj Parikshit when he explained that your questions are glorious because they are about topics of the personality of Godhead, like this. And Maitreya's appreciation kind of began near the beginning of the 7th chapter, where after Vidura asked his initial questions, it was described there that Maitreya was actually astonished. He was astonished at the quality of inquiry of Vidura, and so much so that he, in his astonishment, he closed his eyes and he remembered the Lord and took inspiration from his association with the Lord to be able to gain the answers that he needed to reply to these wonderful questions that Vidura had asked of him. So this was the beginning of his appreciation. And I read a little bit of a commentary on this verse, and there's kind of a little bit of a difference in the translation, but where it says here, bhata means oh, it's like an exclamation that he makes, oh, how wonderful you are, Vidura. And he's saying here, Sat Seva Neo, that actually, because of your devotion for Bhagavan, Bhagavat Pradhana, which is revealed in these questions that you're asking, because of your devotion for the Lord, Bhagavat Pradhana, and because of your birth in the Pūru Vamsha, that dynasty is worthy of worship. Sat Seva Neo, like that, worthy of worship because you have brought fame to that dynasty. The same thing is kind of said about Parikshit Maharaj, that even though the Pandavas were very famous, the 5 Pandavas so famous, and Arjuna, the hero of the Bhagavad Gita, but Parikshit Maharaj brought even greater glory to that family by his role as the hero of the Bhagavatam to Shukadeva Goswami. And when you read the section where it talks about the life of Maharaj Parikshit, we see how glorious his life was and how his hearing of the Bhagavatam for Shukadeva did that it made the dynasty of the Pandavas even more famous. So in this way, Vidura is also glorifying his dynasty. So this Pūru Vamsha is the descendants of Pūru. Yeah. So Pūru was the youngest son of Yayati. Yes, Yayati. So we know that Yayati wanted to have his youth extended, so he went and asked his sons if they would give him his youth, and Yadu, who was his eldest son, declined. And he declined on the basis that he needed to administer religious principles. So although his father was upset with him, I understand this from hearing your class, Viraj, that he declined his father, but he did so on the basis of religious principles, and for that reason Lord Krishna appeared in his dynasty, the Yadu dynasty. But Pūru pleased his father by accepting his old age and giving him his youth, and because of that the father was pleased with his son. He gave him, even though he was the youngest, the responsibility of ruling the kingdom, and that dynasty then passed down through to Dhritarashtra and others, and they became the rulers of the kingdom throughout the history of Bharat-Varsha. So Vidura was born into that dynasty of Pūru. And I'm just going to read a little bit, some thoughts here. So Srila Prabhupada explains in the purport here that Maitreya is thanking Vidura and praising him, therefore, by reference to his family glories. So we can appreciate that by his questions, Vidura has prayed for the association of Maitreya. Actually, in the questions that Vidura, he was on pilgrimage and he came to see Maitreya and asked him many questions because he wanted his association. But in this instance, in the verse today, we can see that Maitreya was happy to have the association of Vidura. And so he's replying that actually I'm being benefited by your association. You come to me for association, but I'm the one that's benefiting by having you before me. And Vishwanath Chakravarti comments that when, by saying, because of your appearance, the Pūru dynasty is worthy of worship by the devotees, that Maitreya is showing that he feels how the association of Vidura, the benefit of that is that it's helping Maitreya to be delivered by remembering Krishna. He's feeling so humbled by the questions of Vidura that he is feeling enlivened and he's feeling his connection deep to the Lord. As I said, when he was astonished by his original questions, the natural recourse for Maitreya was to meditate deeply on the Lord so that he could do justice in answering those questions. And so by this way, he's feeling great appreciation for Vidura, who he feels is delivering him, even though he's inquiring from him. So, the use of butter, oh how wonderful, and Sat Sevaniya is worthy of the devotees' worship, because you are the protector of the planets and you are devoted to the Lord. So this is why this dynasty is worthy of worship, because as the protector of the planets, as the rulers of the Bharatvarsha, of the kingdom, they are devoted to the Lord. And so this is worthy of worship and service. The devotees can serve this dynasty because this particular dynasty are spreading the glories of the Lord by their rulership. Whatever actions the great people perform, the common person follow. Like this. So, and in this way, his explanation develops so nicely in the second part of this verse, where he explains that Kirti-mala means the necklace of the glories of the Lord, right? The mala of the Lord's glories. Prabhupada translates it as the chain of transcendental activities. So the glories of the Lord, which are like a necklace that adorn the devotees, he's bringing out those transcendental glories by his questions. And in this way, it says here, pade pade abhishnam, nutanayasi abhishnam, that therefore at every step and always by this discussion, Sri Sri Gaurani always by this discussion, at every step, in every question, in every verse, in every chapter, you're making this knowledge of the Lord's glories appear ever fresh and new, like that. So in the Puranas there's a nice verse which I discovered: Nishkalam Nishkriyam Shantam Niravajam Niranjam Amritasya Param Setum Dagden Dandam Ivanalam. That if men were able to roll up space, it says, as if it were like a cloth, right? Without one's cultivating the knowledge of the Lord, who is without parts, without actions, who is blameless, who is the bridge to immortality, and who is like a fire that has consumed all of its fuel. If they were able to do that, which is actually impossible. So this is a way of explaining this topic, that without the glories of the Lord, one cannot achieve Him without hearing the Lord. So just as it's not possible to roll up the sky like a piece of cloth, it's impossible to end the miseries of the material world without the Lord's glories. And so it's only when something impossible happens will this misery cease, without realizing the Lord in our heart like that. So this is the devotee's appreciation for the glories of the topics of the Lord, and it's described in the Bhagavad Gita that this knowledge lightens up everything, just as the sun lightens up everything in the daytime. So in this way we can get some insight into the glories of transcendental knowledge, how it can save us from the miseries of material existence like that. But this conversation is on another level, because Vidura is literally, at every question, at every step, he's making his glories so tangible and so insightful, and it shows the qualities of Vidura as a person, very much like this. So we can learn a lot from Maitreya's appreciation for Vidura in our own devotional lives, because as Srila Prabhupada says here very nicely, that Maitreya felt happy to have such glorious company as Vidura, and he considered the company of Vidura most desirable because such association can accelerate one's dormant propensities for devotional service. So this is the importance of association of devotees, that by that association we can accelerate our own propensities for devotional service. Is that, what is that verse? In the association of devotees, topics of the Lord become relishable, and by that association one advances on the path of liberation. Shraddha Bhakti Anukramishati. You know that verse? Right? Satam prasangam mama virya samvido bhavanti hritkana rasayana kataha. That in the association of devotees, these topics, they enter the ear and they go to the heart, and they become, and the law becomes established there and becomes relative. And tadyoshanat ashvapabhagavatmani is that by that process one advances on the path of liberation, and Shraddha, Rati and Bhakti develop as a natural consequence. That one's faith, one's devotion and one's attraction for the Lord develop by that association. So this is the value of hearing in the association of devotees. Yeah. Thank you. I wanted to diverge from this verse a little bit and look at introducing the chapter as a second part of my discussion today. So obviously the questions that Vidura has asked are going to be important, and in the rest of this chapter, in the discussion that will take place, and the reply that Maitreya will give to his questions. But another interesting thing, and for those devotees who have been regularly following this Bhagavatam through, because it's been going on since for some time and throughout the year, and we can just reflect back a little bit on a topic that came up at the end of the second canto, and it led to this point that we are discussing today. And that topic was where, right at the end of the second canto, it was Shaunaka Rishi proposed to speak to the sages about the Padma Kalpa. Does anyone remember that? The Padma Kalpa? And so at that point, he had been explaining the universal form in several chapters throughout the second canto, and this led to hearing about Lord Brahma, hearing the Chaturasloki. And so then he was just about to describe the Padma Kalpa, and the sages diverted him. They said, look, we've heard a lot of topics about the creation and the different kalpas. Can we please hear about Vidura and Maitreya? That's literally what they asked, because we heard that there were some wonderful things discussed there, and we wanted to kind of like relish that nectar. So this was the diversion. So the diversion at the end of Canto 2 led to this canto where we heard about the pilgrimage of Vidura, culminating in his meeting Maitreya and having this conversation. And so many wonderful things have been discussed in there. However, in this chapter, the topics are returning to the discussion of the Padma Kalpa. So that's the context. And I kind of look at this. So let's first of all just look at what is kalpa. We know from the Srimad-Bhagavatam, Sahasra Yuga Pariyantam Ahayat Brahmano Viduhu Ratrim Yuga Sahasrantam Teho Ratra Vido Janaha. By human calculation, Bhagavad Gita explains, 1,000 ages taken together form the duration of Brahma's one day. And such also is the duration of his night. So 1,000 ages taken together, this is a kalpa, a day of Brahma. It's a day of Brahma, and 1,000 ages is an age is a combination of the 4 yugas, Satya, Treta, Dwapara, and Kali Yuga. So 1,000 times that is one day of Lord Brahma. How do we know this? It's explained. It's not given in the translation, but it's explained at the end, in the last line of this verse, which is Bhagavad Gita 8:17. Teho Ratra Vido Janaha. Vido Janaha means those persons, Janaha, who know. Teho Ratra. Aharatra means day and night. So there's the persons who are described as the knowers of the day and night. They know about that 1,000 ages taken together comprise the day of Lord Brahma, and they know that the same comprises his night. So who are they? The Vidojanaha that know this. They were described in the second canto, where you have these yogis who literally, by meditating on the universal form and performing the Sat Chakra Yoga, they are able to transcend the physical body and travel throughout the universe. So Prabhupada describes that they walk on the rays of the sun to the heavenly planets. So they are perfected yogis. This is one path back to Godhead. You can read it, it's very interesting, but it's not for the average man. Still, such people exist and they're described, you know. So when they actually progress throughout the universe, it's described that they reside for some time in the higher planetary systems beyond Swaga, in the Mahaloka. So they are residents of Mahaloka, Janaloka, Tapaloka, etc., in the very high planets. And so at the end of each Brahma's day, there's this partial annihilation that takes place in the universe. But that annihilation only extends to Swaga. So those persons who live on Mahaloka, they see that. Right? So they see the day of Brahma, and they see it end, and they experience his night because they live through it. So Teho Ratra Vido Janaha. They are the knowers of the day and night. It doesn't mean the day and night of our day and night. It means they know the day and night of Lord Brahma because they live through it. So that's what a kalpa is. Right. And this point of the Padma Kalpa is discussed in several places in the Bhagavatam. It's going to come up in this canto in chapter 11, which is focusing on divisions of time. So Kalpa is a division of time. So it's mentioned and discussed there, and the Padma Kalpa particularly is referred to again. And there it says in the purport by Srila Prabhupada that the different millenniums known as the Brahma, Padma and Varaha Kalpas appear a little puzzling for the layman. Yeah? So this Padma Kalpa is kind of puzzling. When is it? Which Kalpa is it? So I know this is a little bit technical and I had to read a lot of things around this, but in that verse where it's described that Sonika Rishi was going to describe the Padma Kalpa, and they said, no, let's talk about Vidura, etc. In the purport there, it gives a list of the 30 days of a month of Lord Brahma, because his 1 day is a kalpa, but he lives for 30 days is 1 month. So each day of the month, it gives a name for every day, every kalpa of the month. And those names recycle. Just as Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Sunday, and then goes back to Sunday again. So the same thing with the days of the month of Lord Brahma, they recycle, but not one of those names is Padmakalpa. So, therefore, it's explained by Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur and also by Srila Prabhupada that some of the kalpas have more than one name, and the name is like a nickname, and it's according to some event that may occur in that name, in that day. And this obvious event that occurs on the Padmakalpa is that that's the day when the lotus appears in the universe. But this doesn't happen in every day of Lord Brahma. It happens at the very beginning of the creation. And without going into all the technical details, it happens also at the end of the first parada. What is a parada? Parada is that Lord Brahma lives for 100 years, and that 100 years can be divided into two. First 50 years, second 50 years. And we are living in Brahma's 51st year. Right? So he's actually, first half of his life is ended, and we're in the very first millennium, the first day of his 51st year. That's the period that we are living in now. So, this Padmakalpa occurs at the beginning of creation, and it also occurs at the beginning of the second parada. Okay? Is that clear, what I'm saying? Yeah. So it's just happened. And what's a unique feature of the Padmakalpa and why it's being referred to is because at that time, all those sages that live in Mahaloka, Janaloka, Tapaloka, they also experience the devastation. And we know this because when Lord Brahma appears on the lotus flower, no one else is there. You understand? It's dark, he's sitting on the lotus, he can't see anyone. So where have those sages? And those sages include people like the four Kumaras, etc. They live for the duration of the life of Lord Brahma. They don't die at the end of each day. They don't merge into the body of Garbhodakaśāyī Viṣṇu at the end of each day of Lord Brahma. So therefore, it's described that this Padmakalpa has only just occurred at the end of the first parada, at the beginning of this second half of Lord Brahma's life. There was a lot of kind of talk about these different things, so I thought I would explore it like that. And so this chapter is called the Manifestation of Brahma from Viṣṇu, and it takes place in the Padmakalpa. And that Padmakalpa has just occurred at the end of his first half of his life. And so there's been a complete devastation, and we'll hear about, and any of these descriptions of the manifestation of Lord Brahma refer to generally this time of the Padmakalpa when the universe is completely new and he's alone in it, performing his tapa to gain inspiration and see the Lord. And this chapter will describe that experience of Lord Brahma during the Padmakalpa. Alright, Srila Prabhupada ki, Srimad-Bhagavatam ki. So if you have any comments or questions.
You finished very early.
You got it?
You finished very early.
Yes, I know. So finished preparing very late. Yes.
Now you mentioned about this Padmakalpa, that when the beginning, when the lotus stem appears and Lord Brahma is born, so that's the beginning of that appearance of Lord Brahma. And then you said about 50 years after of Brahma's life, that's in the middle before the second Radha starts. So, if that is also called Padmakalpa,
yes.
so how can it be? Is Lord Brahma born again or?
Well, he goes to rest at the end of his day, during his night.
Yeah.
And so there's a partial devastation of the creation at that point.
Yeah.
So then he manifests from a sleeping condition again at the start of his day. And at that time, he has to reenact the creation according to what's been annihilated and what needs to be reconfigured. So I guess he's not so much born again, but he's manifest again from a sleeping condition.
No, but the thing is that he is like in the day of the Brahma when there is a manifestation.
Yes.
And then there is a night of Brahma when there is annihilation.
Yes.
But that is happening all the time.
Yes.
Now those 50 years you saying that the middle, you know, I can't understand that because he is doing that in day and night. The manifestation is there. And when he sleeps during the night, then there is annihilation. So how come it comes of 50 years of Brahma, isn't it? His life. I can't understand that Padmakalpa, 50 years of his Brahma's life. Anyway, I'm confused.
No, the Padmakalpa is just one day.
Yeah.
But it's at the end of 50 years. It's the last day of the month of the 50th year.
Okay. Yeah.
You follow? Is that answering your question? Is it?
Yeah.
Okay, so it's just one day, and during that one day, when the creation is being reenacted, that's after a more significant devastation than occurs on an ordinary day of Lord Brahma, at the end of an ordinary day of Lord Brahma. Yeah, that's what I'm saying. Yes, Guru.
Sorry, it's a very mundane question.
Yeah.
So we know Brahmaji is always on the lotus. So if the new lotus comes out, like where does Brahma in the meantime rest?
Is that lotus always there? Because I think the lotus, the lotus kind of appears at the beginning of the millennium, but then he resides in Satyaloka. It's not like he's just sitting on the lotus for 311 trillion and 40 billion years, right? He's living in Satyaloka. So that lotus period is kind of like from those beginning times of the creation.
So then that even Satyaloka is gone. 50 years or Satyaloka?
I can only tell you what I've read, you know. So I don't believe Satyaloka is gone at the time of that devastation, no. But I can't say for sure. Otherwise those sages might take shelter there.
Yeah.
Right?
I can read a bit from this because this is described in Srimad-Bhagavatam.
Yeah.
I can read a little bit about that.
Yeah.
So this is the part when it's describing about the various. So these are a set of different verses from Bhagavatam again. It's in Bhagavatam again. It says so. This Shishumara is the pivot for the turning of the complete universe, and it is called the navel of Viṣṇu, Garbhodakaśāyī Viṣṇu. The yogi alone goes beyond this circle of Shishumara and attains the planet of Maharloka, where the purified saints like Bhrigu enjoy a life equal to 4.3 billion solar years. That planet is worshipable even for the saints who are transcendentally situated. And then it says in the next verse, at the time of devastation of the universe, a flame of fire emanates from the mouth of Ananta. The yogis see all these planets of the universe burning to ashes, and thus he leaves for Satyaloka by aeroplanes used by the great purified souls. The duration of life in Satyaloka is 15.48 trillion years. So
Yeah, that's from the second canto. Those verses.
Those are from the
Yeah.
second canto. So that's again. Sorry, the actual verse that is there in Srimad-Bhagavatam, it says some persons enjoy pleasures in the upper regions like the realm of fire, and attain liberation gradually in stages. And the ascetics fully devoted to spiritual knowledge quickly attain this liberation. So in this, Sanatana Goswami is referring back, in his explanations, he is referring back to Bhagavatam's prayer. So he's explaining the part where
of the yogi,
who goes up to Maharloka, and then he moves up to Satyaloka ultimately.
Ultimately moves up to Satyaloka, and from there they progress through the material coverings and go back to Vaikuntha. That's the process. Yeah, so I'll just read you one more thing on this topic. So Srila Prabhupada explains that there are 3 different types of creation. Right? So one is the Mahakalpa, the Vikalpa, and the Kalpa. The creations by the Lord in his feature of Garbhodakaśāyī, Viṣṇu, at the beginning of creation, that's called the Mahakalpa. That's the manifestation of the Mahatattva, the 3 qualities of modes of nature, and the different expansions of the tanmatras, etc. We've read about those things. So that's the Mahakalpa. Then the Vikalpa is the creation of Brahma, and the dispersion of the material ingredients are called Vikalpa. So that's at the beginning of creation. And then the creation by Brahma in each day of his life is called the Kalpa. Okay? So what it appears to me, and I just thought this could have been interesting to give some context to why they're talking about Padma Kalpa at this point, and that is that it seems to be that at the beginning of the creation and in the middle of the creation, there is a Vikalpa. Do you follow? Yeah. Where Lord Brahma has a lot more creating to do. Like that.
Big servicing.
Huh?
Big servicing.
Big service.
That kind of makes sense. Sorry,
Yes.
Prabhu.
Yeah, go on. Yes, Viraj.
Sorry. So that kind of makes sense because the next chapter is Brahma's prayers for creative energy.
Yes.
So a lot more work needs to be done, and probably after 50 years, Brahma has forgotten. So he's praying for that.
He's a bit sleepy. Yes, Prabhu.
Prabhu, is there a description of the lotus that Lord Brahma sits on? So,
It'll come up in this chapter. Yeah. It'll describe his appearance on that lotus in this chapter. All right.
There's probably one thing more.
Yes.
In the Brahmaji's age, as you said, it's 51st year and 28th day.
Millennium, yes. Yes.
And the 7th Manu.
Yes.
So exactly at midday.
Midday, of this day, yeah.
Of the Brahma's time at midday.
Yeah. And that's the millennium that Lord Krishna appears, which is, when you look at the vastness of time, it's not very far removed from when we are living.
It's in the 28th day, you said.
28th day
of the first month.
of the
1,000 days of 1,000 year cycle millenniums that make up one day of Lord Brahma. So we're in his first day, and there's 1,000 millenniums make up one day. We're in the 28th millennium of that 1,000. And on that day, there are 14 menus in one day of Lord Brahma. And this is the 7th menu. Yeah.
So sometime of Brahma.
Again.
So it is actually, Brahmaji is on 50th year, first day.
Yes.
That's right. He's nearly 50. He's
Oh,
on the way to 51.
He's going to take sannyas?
Sorry, is it
What is it? Huncha sword Vanam Rajet. At the age of 50, you have to go to the forest.
so is it 50 years 28th day?
28th millennium, right?
Of the first.
Um,
Of the
first day.
The first day.
So when you said millennium,
Yeah, 28 out of the 1,000.
Okay.
Out of, see, on the first day you've got 1,000 millenniums. Out of
28 million.
Yeah.
Yeah, so it's the 28th day, and there are 14 manus in one day of Brahma.
Yeah.
So we're at the midday of the 28th day.
So it's lunch.
Yeah, of the first of the first day. Yeah.
The first day.
All right.
Thank you.
Grantaraj Srimad-Bhagavatam ki.
Jai.
Prabhupada ki.
Jai.
Lord Brahma ki.
Jai.
Vidura ki. Jai.
Jai.
Very much.